Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the PureCloud Community's Q&A show, the show where we answer your pressing questions in the community. I'm your host and community manager, Matt Lawson, and this week I'm really excited, not just because I have some fancy new Funkos behind me, but also because we get to welcome back one of our original experts to the show, George. George, welcome back to the program. I understand you got to take a nice vacation away from us. Did you find time to relax on your road trip down south?
A little bit, yeah. One of the highlights was going to see our grandchildren. Yes, we have grandchildren in South Carolina. So we spent a half a day with them at the zoo and got together with the other grandparents and just had a bit of a relaxing time before we headed back to Indianapolis.
Very cool. We are here to answer questions from the community. George, if it's all right with you, I say let's go ahead and get started.
Here we go.
All right, George, to get started, we'll go ahead and hop into the question that you wanted to do a quick walkthrough of. This week's question comes to us from Jorge, who at this point might as well be considered a regular contributor to the show. I think we picked a couple of questions from him. His question this week involves email content analysis, subject and or body to have some priority rule applied while receiving messages on this channel. The question that he asks is, hi, had received the question from one of our customers asking to see if an action can be taken. In this case, to have some emails received routed with a higher priority based upon the content found in the email, subject and or body, in order to be received in the queue. Tried to find something in the community with no success. That's a bummer. That's what we don't like to hear. George, what advice do you have for Jorge?
Yeah, and I gave a little bit of feedback on that thread, and he was able to find some stuff in the resource center, but I wanted to give a quick overview of how it was set up just so that anybody else who finds that question and wants to know, okay, how do I really set this thing up? We'll have it on tape here. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see my architect inbound flow right now.
Yep, coming through perfect.
So basically he was asking, how do I analyze this email that's coming in and then assign a priority to it as the basics of it. There are a lot of things you can do based upon analyzing inbound email. But in this case, we're just going to assign higher priorities to certain emails based upon what's in the email. This flow coming in, it's an inbound email flow in Architect. And this starting or initial state is what actually takes control of the email when it first comes in. First little thing I did here is just put a quick email body reply saying, oh, thank you for contacting us. We're going to send you an email response within 24 business hours. It's just kind of that standard nicety. So when it enters the flow, we send a response back to the person. And then we're going to assign a priority using, in this instance, a select action. Or switch action. And this is going to allow me to have multiple cases where I'm going to say, okay, if it has this thing in the body or the subject, then do this priority. And then if it has a different word or words in the body or the subject line, then it's going to take a different priority and so on. So the switch lets me have multiple cases instead of just a decision, which is it this or is it the other thing? Only two possibilities. So here I set it up to take the path of the first case that returns true, and then I set up my cases. In this particular instance, I set up cases to look at the email subject. And let me back up a second on this one. I'm going to remove, I'll go in and show how I did this case. I went to the first case, and by default, they just show true or false. It's a Boolean. Instead, I went down to this email builder, and that pops up a little interface that lets us pick things from the email that we want to look at. In this case, I actually just selected the email subject, and when you read the question, I remembered, oh, wait a minute, Jorge was talking about subject or body. So for building the expression, I just click on the email menu up here, and I can check various things. And right here, we want to check the email subject or body. We want to see if it contains a specific thing. So I made it simple. I just typed in high priority, and that way it will look for the body or the email subject containing those words high priority. Save it. Then I've got a little expression for my first case that it's going to analyze, and if that subject or body contains those words, it's going to assign a specific priority when it does the transfer to ACD email.
Quick question for George.
Just a second.
Oh, just a quick question for you. So when it does that search, will it be looking for both words, or will it be looking for that combination of words? For instance, if the customer said, I'm not sure if this would be a high or a low priority, would it still flag the email?
Yeah, in this case, I just set it up with the 2 words. If I remember correctly, and I'll have to correct myself later if I'm wrong, if you put it in quotes, it should be looking for the full phrase.
Cool, got it.
There, I'm setting up a literal. I could also do an expression there, and I could do all kinds of wonderful things with building the expression. It's going to analyze all the content and come up with strings of letters, that kind of thing, using regular expressions. But I'll have to double check that one, make sure I'm right, and I'll put a note on the thread if I'm not after the fact. One thing I wanted to note too, in order to get the right words in the subject or in the body, normally on the website where somebody's going to be contacting customer service for the company, you'll go to the website, you'll see a link that says contact us, and you'll build an email based on filling in a form on the web page. The form would have specific options that it would put into the subject or the body based upon the customer. So you don't want just anybody to select, yeah, I'm high priority, let me select high priority for the subject. Instead, it would be based upon the customer's login on the web page, and then in the background, the web page would define, oh, this is a high priority customer. They bought platinum level status, so we're going to automatically, in a hidden operation in the background, assign a subject with high priority in the subject. So when it gets to the actual email server in AWS, Amazon Web Services, then it's going to analyze this and say, oh, okay, based upon the flow, high priorities in the email subject, or maybe in the body, wherever we built it in using our web page functionality, and it will take this path based upon what the web page did, not necessarily what the customer put in there. For other situations where you want to base it on just something the customer put into the email itself, such as, okay, they put cancel my subscription in the email. You might want to flag on the word cancel and say, if the word cancel is someplace in the subject or the body, we're going to put a higher priority on it, get it to an agent earlier, because we don't want to lose our business. So different ways you could set it up. And here you can see in the transfer, once I transfer to customer service down below here, because I set up the cases in the switch, and then in the case, I'm going to transfer this one to the customer service queue, and I'll assign a priority of 5 stars. I can do 0 to 5 stars in half-star increments. So this one has 5 stars, that's the highest priority. The middle one is going to be medium priority, and it's 2.5 stars. And then this default is if they don't have either high or medium priority in the subject or the body, then it's going to assign 1 star priority and route it into the queue. So these ones will have the lowest priority. I don't need a separate case for low priority. It's just the default if they don't have something else. That's just really it. There's not a whole lot to it. You just build that expression, like I said, using the macros here essentially, and it's pretty simple. Set it up to make it as simple as possible.
All right, awesome. Thanks a lot for that answer, George. Jorge, I hope that was helpful for you. And if not, just let us know in the comments, but we hope that gave you a little bit more context. All right, George, let's go ahead and move on to what I think is my favorite segment of the show. George, I think you know what I'm talking about. What is it?
It's going to be Stump the George.
Stump the George. In the community, sometimes we get questions that cannot be answered. And when I say cannot, I may mean that literally. Sometimes they cannot, sometimes they have not. But this is where I bring our experts to the questions that have not received a reply, and we do our best to point whoever asked the question in the right direction. The great news is, whatever advice George has to offer is better than nothing. The bad news is, if George has no advice to offer, he is considered stumped. And at that point, the question moves on to the bounty board, where it is up for grabs for other customers to answer in exchange for some pretty sweet GCAP points. This question comes to us from Julie. Julie wants to know about email history / conversation log. Julie writes, "Hi there. I am wondering if there is a setting or way to set up email so the recipient will see the email conversation history. We can see it in PureCloud or on our end, but each email received by customer doesn't contain the conversation history. Wondering if I am missing something with the setup or if this is the expected functionality. Thanks." This one has been answered with an idea. George, what I wanted to ask you is, do you have any advice for Julie until this idea can come to fruition?
Well, I haven't seen the idea, so I'm not sure what it contains. And I also would have to go look at the settings in the email flow to see if there's a way to tell it to retain the history. She's calling it the history, but I'm talking about the replies within the body of the email. When an agent replies to an email, it's got the body of the previous message coming in. So I'm not sure why the history would not be there unless somebody is going through a website or something that creates the email and sends a brand new one each time. I would expect the whole history to be in the main email body because it retains the replies and responses on each side as it builds a response from an agent. So I probably have to go back and get more clarification from Julie on what's really happening, and then look at Architect to see if there's something in the flow for the initial, hey, thanks for waiting, to make sure it includes the original body. And then also when it gets to an agent, it should include the original body by default.
All right, cool.
Containing the whole history.
Well, we'll go ahead and pass that information along to Julie and see if she has any more follow-up for us. Just one or two more here. This next question comes from Kevin. He wants to know about calls per hour. In this instance, we actually had somebody give him some advice, and I wanted to see if you agree with what they had to say. Kevin wants to know, "Hi all, hope you are having a great week. I was wondering if anyone uses agent calls per hour as a metric, and if so, how do you achieve it within PureCloud reporting? Is it possible? Any plans to create this? Thank you." What do you think, George? Any advice for Kevin?
I'll scroll down. Let's see what the answer was.
Well, the answer was more of a hypothetical around how they've set up their queues, not necessarily telling Kevin how to do what he wants to do. So I was just wondering if you could answer his specific question about, can you set up a reporting on calls per hour?
There is no reporting to do it directly.
Okay.
Basically, our reporting is stock. There is no way to customize the reports themselves. The agent calls per hour would have to be taking just the agent statistics, and it's broken down by half-hour increments right now. So if you look at the statistics under the performance views, you could get to where it shows how many calls people took in a specific interval. You could then export that, I think, to CSV, and then you can massage that stuff to do a recalculation of the spreadsheet and come up with calls per hour, I'm presuming. But it would take custom manipulation of an exported CSV file in Excel or whatever to get to the data that they want. I think I noticed as you scroll down briefly that the Pure Insights was mentioned. Definitely that's an option. It's from the App Foundry. There are a couple other custom reporting vendors out there from App Foundry, but just in our there is no such thing as custom reports. They could probably build something with the API, but it's not out of the box. So it's going to take customization, whichever way you look at it.
Gotcha. That was more than anything kind of what I wanted to know. So awesome. Thank you for that, George. All right, George, I have just one more question to see if we can stump you. Let's go ahead and get to it. This question comes to us from Matt. I like that name. Well, his name is Matt. I like the name Matt. Anyway, transfer chat from one queue to another queue based on skill. Hi, everyone. Here's the scenario. All inbound chats come into one catch-all queue. I want to have inbound chats with certain skill IDs move/transfer to a different queue automatically. Anyone know how to do that? Now, George, I know you and I have talked about questions similar to this before, particularly in terms of like different types of routing and stuff. I wanted to pick this one out in particular because Matt's a new member and he might just kind of be getting started with the system. I'm not really sure. But in general, what kind of advice would you give for Matt, either in this scenario or somebody who's getting started to Genesis and might just need some good resources for getting caught up to speed? What do you think?
My first recommendation is don't do that. The putting all chats into one queue and then trying to sort them out is not something that PureCloud is designed to do yet, or not designed to do, period. Once we have PureCloud Architect active for queuing the chats coming in, because that's going to be there's going to be inbound chat functionality in Architect, then you'll be able to analyze the chats coming in and then put them into the correct queue initially based upon whatever information is in the chat. You'll be able to analyze the body and say, oh, this one goes to customer service or sales or whatever, and you can assign skills, that type of thing, doing the analysis in the inbound chat flows. But once you put a chat into a queue, there's really no good way to just analyze it and say, oh, this one needs to be pulled out of this queue and transferred to a different queue. There might be something you could do with the API, but that would be rather difficult, and the system's just not designed for that. So really, they should not be dumped into one queue and then separated. They should be separated and then dumped into the appropriate queues to begin with. And that can be done on the web page. You can analyze what somebody wants to do based upon what they put into the chat widget, and then get it into the correct queue from there, and just do it on the front end, so you're not trying to sort it out on the back end.
All right, cool, perfect. So in terms of Matt being a new member and maybe learning like some best tips like you just described, maybe he had a good idea or what he thought was a good idea, but it's just not ideal for our system. Do you have any other recommendations for, how he should get started? Should he maybe get started with a particular course? Is there a section of the resource center he should reference? What do you think about that?
There is a best practices section of the resource center. I don't know if it has anything specifically regarding chat. The other thing to look at is the developer center, developer.mypurecloud.com, which is where the main coding side of chat would be talked about. So there's a forum there. You could ask, okay, how would I set up a web page? How would I set up the chat widget properly to do what I want to do here? And people on the developer side could probably give more information on how to do the the front end before it gets to our back end in PureCloud.
And then Matt, just in case you aren't sure exactly how to get to the developer center or the developer forum, let me give you a couple of hints. So the first hint is if you ever come to our helpful links panel, you'll see here that we do have developer centers linked to, or our developer community linked to, especially for PureCloud. And I think under the knowledge resources, we also have links to the resource center. George, thank you so much for your time. Matt, we hope that was helpful, and we hope to hear from you more in the future. George, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I always appreciate getting the time to catch up with you. I know you're a busy man, so it means a lot when you can come on and help us answer some questions. Just so everybody knows, next time we do an episode, it'll be a little different because George and I are going to sunshiny Scottsdale, Arizona. George, how excited are you for the trip?
I can't wait to get out there with them rattlesnakes. Reminds me of my childhood.
We're used to poisonous questions in the community, but we will be handling them in real life. It's going to be exciting to record a question with you in person. We will be there for a GU offsite. It's where the Genesis University team, all of us, gets to come together. And George and I thought we cannot waste this opportunity to record an episode while we are in the same room, holding hands, maybe by the pool, maybe having a drink. Who knows? All I know is it'll be a lot of fun, and I can't wait.
Thanks for tuning in for this week's episode. We hope it was helpful and maybe a little bit entertaining. Each week, our host and experts review community discussions and debate what content to discuss, so your voice matters. Did we miss something? Do you have a question for the show? Let us know. Join the conversation at the Genesis online community. As a Genesis customer or partner, you can create an account. Just click the sign-in button found on most pages and follow the necessary instructions to create an account. Also, feel free to email us at qashow@genesis.com. We'd love to hear from you. If this is your first episode, welcome. You can view our entire archives. Go to the Helpful Links panel found on most community pages and find the QA Show archive that interests you. We appreciate your support of the show and the community. Cheers!